right. Guess we'll give it a few minutes. I don't see the viewers yet.
I see one comment from David M.
Do you? Okay.
11:28. So I don't think we were live then. But I'll monitor that as well.
Maybe let me jump out and come back in.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. Yep, that did it. I don't know what that was all about.
Yeah, we got David and Brigitta. David. Okay.
No, I see everyone now. It was showing me 0 people. So we'll just go ahead and kick it right off. Welcome, everyone, to Peraton's Mission Transition, Unlocking Your Next Career Move podcast. I'm your host today, Brian Acton, accompanied by my colleague, Jeff Carson. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. What we'll do is we'll give it like another second or two, for some folks to be able to get back in. It was a little wonky for me. I had to log out and then jump back in. So we'll give it a little second. So, of course, if you're looking at careers here at Peraton, absolutely go to our careers website, careers.peraton.com. You can also reach out to our military and veterans team, which is where Jeff and I are employed here at Military Connect at peraton.com as well. We'd be happy to assist any folks that are looking to get into Peraton. So it looks like I'm still seeing some folks jump in, but what we'll go ahead and do for time is we'll just go ahead and jump it right on off. So I'll let Jeff introduce himself first today, since I always go first.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Carson. I am part of the military veteran talent team. I've been with Peraton now for almost about 9 years now, coming up in the next few weeks. Nice. I'm an Army veteran, 18 years since I've transitioned. So I've been out for almost as long as I was in, 18
nice.
years. So I'd never thought about it that way, but yes, but it seemed like time just flew by. So I got my start as an Army recruiter. And that's kind of where I got my bug as far as staying in the veteran talent community. I specialize in outreach, creating partnerships, attracting talent across various industries. So I'm at a lot of the transition events, virtual job fairs, and I'm on social media a lot too. So, which is kind of ironic to what this class is about. So I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn, and hopefully this session will be beneficial to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Jeff's our wheel guy. He goes to a lot of events here in the National Capital Region, Northern Virginia area. So I'm sure a lot of folks on the call have ran into Jeff at some place around here at some time. He's everywhere. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Brian Acton. I'm also part of our military and veteran talent operations program here. I've been in talent operations for 25 years now. I've done it in just about every facet and sector that you can think to do it. Department of Defense. I've done it for the federal government, contract and corporate sectors, different types of titles and genres of the position, if you will. I'm one of those guys as well. I'm also a veteran of the Marine Corps and the U.S. Army. And just like Jeff, that's where I got my start in talent acquisition way back. I was also a recruiter in the Army with the Global War on Terrorism and so forth. And, this is probably one of our favorite podcasts to do. As Jeff mentioned, we are heavy social media users here. It's more specifically LinkedIn. So we really have some good information we're going to drip out today. So you're definitely going to learn something out of what we're going to present today. And then I'll go ahead and present our colleague as well, Brent Buffington. He is also part of our team. He had a personal item here this morning, so he may pop on possibly later on into the broadcast. But if he doesn't, that's his information. That's the three of us. And feel free to reach out to any three of us, connect with us on LinkedIn, or reach out to us at our military connect at peraton.com email and so forth. And we'd definitely be happy to engage. So what we're going to start talking about today. So we're going to talk about why LinkedIn matters in 2026, how recruiters use it, and why it's important to you. And then we're going to talk about profile power, breaking down an effective profile, and really what that kind of looks like and what recruiters are looking for in your profiles as well. Then we're going to talk about how to build connection etiquette guidelines, really how to engage with others on LinkedIn effectively to ideally garner more responses from folks and so forth. And then we're going to talk about some LinkedIn job search hacks, some things you can do to find roles on LinkedIn either and connect with folks on LinkedIn regarding roles. And then we're going to do a little virtual and in-person career fairs and networking events, kind of what not to do and what to do so that you can go to those events if you do go to those events and get the best bang for your buck out of those. So that's kind of our agenda here this morning. So we're going to jump right into what we're going to discuss. I want to look too fast there. All right. So why LinkedIn still matters in 2026. So when you look at the way LinkedIn is structured versus how some of the job boards are structured, they are set up quite different. So, as someone that's been in talent acquisition for many, many, many years, LinkedIn has a majority of the time been a priority job board that I would go to source and search for candidates that may be qualified for my roles. And there's a reason for that too, compared to traditional job boards like Indeed, Monster, Career Builder, and so forth. And it's really because those platforms have high volumes of people on there, but finding directly qualified candidates is actually much more difficult in those scenarios versus LinkedIn. It's really easy to filter down to candidates that might align with your role in a much more effective manner. So when you look at the industry of recruiting, talent acquisition, whatever it's called, it does have many titles, sourcers and sourcing and headhunting, any of that kind of stuff. That's why LinkedIn is important for you. If someone that's in the job search, but also as your career profile, right? This is your constantly updated resume, if you will. And why that's important. I know I get reached out for roles all the time. I'm not in the job market, but you never know the next role that you're going to get into. You might not even be looking for it. It just might land in your lap like that, right? That does happen. So that's why your LinkedIn profile optimization matters, right? Because recruiters do pay attention to your profile. We use Boolean terms, key search words to really find who we're looking for and to relate to these positions. And I know between Jeff and myself, one thing we run into a lot, especially with transitioning service members or those in the cleared community, that, they spend a whole career being told, hey, social media is not good for you if you're cleared and so forth like that. So we like to dispel some of that kind of myth as well on utilizing the platform to your professional advantage. Jeff, I know you definitely have some stuff to add on that, especially when we start talking about our transitioning service members.
Yes, Brian, it basically comes down to being seen and being recognized. And so if you're not on, say, for example, you don't have a LinkedIn account and you don't have a general profile just stating what you do and not necessarily having, if you're in the IC community, some, classified information, you don't want to put that up there, but you want to be seen. And I think sometimes, as Brian mentioned, some people with clearances, they've been told not to be on it, not to stay on it. But I always kind of paint this picture in this scenario. If you're on it, and if someone can connect with you, if they're interested in your background, say you're an intelligence analyst or a cybersecurity analyst, if we connect, we don't have to stay on LinkedIn. We can exchange email addresses. If you don't think that this person that's reaching out to you or a recruiter is legitimate, or you've never heard of them, or you're wondering why is this person contacting me, use your ingenuity. Especially if you're in the intel community, call the company. Say, hey, is Brian Acton, is he a recruiter? He reached out to me. Sure, he is. Just saying. They've told me not to stay on LinkedIn for this particular reason. Remember, you're transitioning, especially if you're in the market of looking for a job. You need to be seen. And so, if you just close the door and say, "Well, I'm protecting my identity, I'm protecting my clearance, and I don't want the bad guys to find me," then you won't be found by anyone, not to including recruiters and talent acquisition specialists. Right. And one thing to add to that alone is what Brian mentioned, Indeed and some of those other ones. Some of those accounts and those subscriptions, they cost money. And so some companies, and me and Brian have worked for small companies before, and we know that some small companies don't have the budget to pay for subscriptions to clearance jobs, Indeed. So What's the next alternative? Well, let's use LinkedIn to find people to connect with, and then jump off LinkedIn and we can exchange email addresses and communicate that way. So that's just two scenarios to kind of look at it that way. Not to be so protective. It's a way to be seen on LinkedIn, not necessarily I'm looking for, I can't find a job. And I'll let Brian, we'll get a little bit more into some of those tips.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I think some of the other key things you can look at as well, you know, definitely looking at someone that's reaching out to you and looking at their profile as well. Does it look professional? Does it look well built out? Because a recruiter on LinkedIn understands LinkedIn and has a built out profile. Am I on the company's LinkedIn as one of their employees? And probably the biggest factor, if you're really trying to pick out, you know, nefarious actors, if you will, is no recruiter. I've been doing it 25 years. And never in my life have I asked for driver's license numbers or social security numbers or your birth date or anything like that. So, and another key piece to look at too, when you're trying, you know, if you're wary about getting into one, is what email address am I using? Because I'll be coming from a Peraton.com email address directly, you know, no Gmails or Yahoos or any of these other random, you know, email services as well.
Good point.
Yeah. So we'll move on down. So profile, breaking down an effective profile though. So this is really where you want to at least get some bare bones going, right? So, you know I personally have spent years building out my profile. I add things in there, I take things out. You know, it's a constantly adjusting and moving thing for me, but you definitely have to have your headline in there, you know, under your picture. You should ideally have a picture in there, and so forth. And the one thing I'd like to add about that though, too, when we talk about building a LinkedIn profile, right, you know, and being clear to doing that. I mean, the director of national intelligence has a LinkedIn profile. So if he can do it, I'm pretty sure you probably can too. So, you know, so put what your title is, you know, are you a cyber intelligence, you know, cybersecurity engineer, all source intelligence analyst, you know, highlight your value or target role of what you're trying to do. Right. So it's easy to find you. Banner image, you know, of course, use a professional banner image. I know a lot of military folks especially like to put pictures, you know, in uniform with sunglasses on and stuff like that. You know, is that the image you want to present, or are you trying to, you know, enter another professional space in that sense? You know, using an industry themed banner, right? You know, if you're a cybersecurity professional, probably having something cybersecurity related as a banner. It helps make your profile look professional though. And also lets us know when people put that kind of work into it, that maybe they're not a nefarious person too, right? So having a profile photo, you know, lets us know who we're reaching out to. First impressions matter, right? A summary about section. This is a big piece of it. This tells a quick story about yourself. And ideally, it should almost match your summary or objective statement of your resume. Tell us who you are. You know, all source intelligence analyst with 15 years of experience, using tools such as, you know, HotR, Analyst Notebook, trying to expand my career into the all source intelligence career field, you know, break something down in there. And then when you build out your experience, put some good stuff in your experience as well, because what we're using is keywords to look for you. So when you build out your experience level on your LinkedIn, you know, you put in your job title, when you've worked there, give information, give a couple of sentences about the roles and responsibility of the role, and then some bullets about your tasks, actions, and results. You know, what did you do? What were you tasked to do? What happened? Those type of things. Ask people for recommendations or skills and endorsements. Almost passed up on that one. So it kind of depends on what career path you're in, but you may have to put in there, you know, do you have your Security Plus or your CISP or, you know, PMP or, you know, Scrum Master, you know, those type of things. Because a lot of times we will be searching exactly for those types of certifications when we do our searches, looking for folks, right? It adds credibility to you as a potential candidate to reach out to, right? Licenses and certifications or recommendations, you know, certainly asking colleagues to give you a recommendation on there. It's not the biggest one we look for, right? But it adds credibility to your profile, right? So I know that's why I have recommendations on mine. So it lets people know that I'm a real person, right? Because typically nefarious actors aren't getting recommendations and stuff. So, so that's ways to look at profiles and tell that kind of information. And this is kind of the bare bones of it, right? So, I always tell folks, by all means, please go look at my LinkedIn profile and see how it's built out. And LinkedIn does have a thing on there that kind of scores your LinkedIn profile. Been a while since I've looked at that part of it, but it'll tell you, how powerful your profile may be out there as well. But putting enough information in there, a lot of folks will give some really bare bones information. At a minimum, it should nearly match your resume, right? Because that's really what we're looking for, is that type of information. Jeff, what would you like to add in on this one?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Ryan, when you're talking about when recruiters are doing a Boolean search. I can remember, and I haven't filled any recs in quite a while, but I can still remember doing a Boolean search and typing in just keywords and the location,
right,
and maybe pulling out 20 profiles that match that Boolean search. The security clearance, the certification, a few keywords, and then just simply reaching out to them, say, hey, I saw your profile on LinkedIn. I got a role that would you be considered, talking over this position? And so it's just as simple as that, just those. So the more information, just to reiterate, the more information that you add in your profile that's relevant to what recruiters and job seekers, or what's typically in a resume or a job announcement, should I say, it's just going to improve your chances of someone possibly reaching out to you, because you just never know when a recruiter has gotten frustrated with Indeed, have gotten frustrated with cleared jobs, and just let me just search for a few people. And it may be just your region. It may be, Richmond, where they're find a help desk specialist in Richmond, and your profile may be in that area with just those keywords, and that's what it can lead to. But I would tell you, the more that you add, that you improve your chances of possibly being reached out to by a recruiter or someone in the talent acquisition field.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give everybody kind of, because I know we've said it a couple of times that we do our Boolean searches. Basically what that is some syntax that we use so that it helps narrow down profiles. We use like parentheses or quotations and ands and ors and nots. We build these things out so that it takes the, a big candidate pool, and we'll filter it down to say maybe 20 or 30 that should be more directly relevant to the role we're looking for. So that's why adding that information in there is very important, because if you don't have enough information, you're not going to be showing in a lot of searches. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you it does work, especially, if you're in these high demand fields, but you're not getting reached out to regularly. That should be a sign that, maybe your profile is not really saying much, or you're not showing up on searches, right? Because that's the only way we're going to be able to reach out to you. It's very rare that we're going to search someone by name if we're looking for someone to fill our role. So we're going to look by a Boolean search. And if you have no information, you never show up. There you go. You never get reached out to, right? So if LinkedIn's pretty silent for you all the time, that's usually a sign.
Yep.
I'm also getting jumpy on me today, though. So, understanding LinkedIn connections, though, too. I feel like this, in one of my opinions, is one of the big things about understanding LinkedIn in its totality, too. What is a first-degree connection, second-degree connection, a third-degree connection, and really what do they kind of mean to you, and what do they get to see? Because that kind of is what builds your network expansively, right? Especially when you're trying to build your network. So first-degree connections are people you are connected with personally. So obviously, me and Jeff are connected on LinkedIn. We are first-degree connections. We have added each other as connections on LinkedIn. So say, Jeff goes to a career fair and somebody adds Jeff to his LinkedIn, and Jeff and I are connected. That person now becomes a second-degree connection to me. So you'll see who you have in common, and I can also look into them and send them connection requests as well. So third-degree connections, this is where it gets a little deep, if you will. They're kind of the friends of friends, right? So where you might see a lot of third degree connections is if you're utilizing the groups on LinkedIn. And I highly suggest you should, because recruiters do utilize groups on LinkedIn. So if you're in a group on LinkedIn and two people are in that, now everyone in that group pretty much becomes a third degree connection. However, how it works though is when, say, me as a recruiter, I'm out here, I'm doing my Boolean string and I'm searching for someone, first degree connections will always show first. So that's why it's important. So connections, how that person's connected to me will always show first. So first degree connections will typically always show first when I do a Boolean search, so that's why building your network of career like-minded individuals will help you show up in these job searches as well. So having a lot of first degree and second degree connections are great, because what can also happen, say I'm connected to somebody and Jeff's not, but Jeff creates a post that starts getting some views on LinkedIn. My who's a second degree connection to him could see that post on LinkedIn at the same time and then be like, oh, let me look at this, and or connect with Jeff and or react to the post. And that's kind of how you start to utilize the LinkedIn algorithms in your favor. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. I think it's a couple slides up on why doing some of these things is effective to being seen and noticed on LinkedIn as well, without taking much time in a day. You can literally increase your algorithm in 15 seconds a day, realistically. And everybody's got that kind of time. Jeff, anything you want to throw in on kind of the connections and how they really work?
Well, I can remember, Brian, when I first, this is years ago when LinkedIn first came out, I didn't really understand how this worked, but now I understand. If you look at it, it's sort of like a spider web. It just continues to spread out, and it's always to that first layer. And so this is an example of not only just about those connections and following and connecting with people in those different layers, is when they post stuff, you're able to see suggestions, advice, tips. So look at it this way, as you should always be learning something new on LinkedIn. It's not just a platform where I'm just looking for a job, because you could get some information, some advice that could help you how to utilize LinkedIn to better improve your chances of connecting to the right person or the right opportunity.
That is correct. Mm-hmm. So now we're going to talk about building that strategic network, right? So how do you make it work in your favor, though? Especially when, if you're just building one out, you've only got a few hundred connections or something like that, and you're really trying to get it up there. So building that strategic network and why it matters. So your network shapes your visibility and credibility at the same time. It determines who sees you. So if you are, an operations manager, a logistics planner, a transportation specialist, or whatever you are, is finding folks that do those same types of roles and connecting with them, because then you're creating a strong network that will lead to referrals and recommendations as well. So as an example where you could do this is you would go to, say, Peraton's page on LinkedIn. And on that, you can look at employees then, and it'll show everyone that's tagged themselves as a Peraton employee. So then if you are an operations manager, type in employees with the title operations manager, type that in employee search, and then it's going to start showing you folks that are titled themselves as operations manager, connecting with those folks. We're going to talk about connection etiquette here coming up on how to do that professionally, though, so those folks do connect with you and so forth, because just like everyone else, they're vetting their connections, right? So we'll talk about that. And it also increases LinkedIn algorithms and encourages engagement within your network. So you're typically more likely to like, share, or comment on content that's naturally in your field of work anyway, right? So as an example, I'm not a cybersecurity engineer, so I do have a lot of cybersecurity engineers in my network, though, because that's what we employ. So I see a lot of cybersecurity stuff on there. I like some of it, but I don't typically make comments or add much thought to it, right? It's not my professional knowledge wheelhouse. However, when I see stuff related to talent acquisition, and Jeff puts something up and I like what he's put up, and I'll be like, yeah, this is great information. I love how it does A, B, or C, right? So then it increases the algorithms that get you visibility then, though, too. And who to connect with strategically, though. So like we said, looking at employees that work at the organizations that have the titles that you're looking for. Former colleagues you've worked with is obviously where you should start. Everyone that's been through a transition assistance program should have LinkedIn connected with everyone they were in it. Everyone you work in your office with. In my world, like, it would be strange if Jeff, Brent, or myself weren't connected as first connections on LinkedIn. Like, that would make zero sense for us to work together and not be first connections on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
And you can also target, recruiters or talent acquisition professionals in your target companies and industries as well. So that's where I do suggest, if you're trying to get into Peraton, engage some talent acquisition professionals from our company. Also locate and engage, people with your like-minded career background. And that'll really help get you visibility on there as well. Because that's where you can lead to the referral request. That's ultimately where some of that helps, where if I'm a cybersecurity professional, you've reached out to me, you're also perhaps a veteran, and say, hey, Brian, I applied to this job. Here's this information. Here's how I feel like I'm qualified. Here's my resume. Would you be willing to give me a referral? Makes it hard to say no, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on building network here, Jeff?
Yeah, Brian, also, not only just connecting with personnel to grow your network. For example, say Peraton wins a large contract, and the company has posted it, and we're going to repost it. Our recruiters are going to repost it. Many people in the company is going to repost that. So if you're connected to myself, Brian, a Peraton employee, now you're going to see all of our newest contract awards. You're going to see hot jobs. If some of, like me and Brian mentioned, even if there is some cyber positions out there that we need to fill in San Diego, California, and you're in that region, if Brian reposts it, then you see it because you're connected to Brian. If our recruiters post it, we're going to repost it. So it keeps you abreast as to what's going on with that targeted company. I've heard people say, I want to work with Peraton. Well, you should be following Peraton. You should be following, because they're going to post contracts, hiring events. Many times we host what we call a nationwide hiring event throughout the United States at different locations. Mm-hmm. How do you know about when those come up? Because you're connected to us, and we're going to repost those things. So it keeps you abreast as to, and many times there could be just an opportunity that was out there, you just didn't know about it. So it's greater than just connecting to people and building your network. There's a purpose behind it.
Absolutely. And the groups, though, too,
Yes.
I think that's one of the big ones, though, too. So if you're in cybersecurity, there's lots of cybersecurity groups on there, but I'm a person that usually just goes for the one that has the most people already in the group.
Yeah.
So as an example, like me and Jeff are, we work with a lot of transitioning service members. So we are on the LinkedIn group. We both are on the U.S. Army transitioning group. It's got like 180,000 people in it, right? So when we do things, like this, we post it in that group to say, hey, we have this mission transition podcast, to get people to register for it, that type of thing. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely, these are just some ideas on how to get acquainted with LinkedIn more in-depthly, find ways to grow your network strategically, go on company pages, look for employees that are relevant to you, that type of thing. And you'll be surprised how your algorithm on LinkedIn will start changing, and you'll start, all of a sudden your inbox will start getting dinged up, and people are like, hey, we're looking for a cybersecurity guy, and, it might not be relevant to you, but eventually one will be. We're looking for a guy, North Dakota. You're like, I'm not going to North Dakota, I'm in Florida, that kind of thing. But, but now you're on the radar somewhere, right? So,
Brian, I've told people many times, you almost have to be strategic, like an agent when you're using LinkedIn. It's almost like you're an open source agent, and there's so many ideas. I remember one young lady that was a public affairs specialist. And one of the things I mentioned to her was, she was like, I applied for the position. I said, well, I know a public affairs specialist at our company. And I mentioned how her on the company's website. If you look at, it'll show who posted, who's the public affairs person for Peraton. I said, if you look at it this way, I said, you could actually connect with her on LinkedIn. And if you see a public affairs position out there, there's a pretty good chance she may be part of the interview process. She may be part of the selection process. And Brian mentioned as well, people that you've served with, that you've worked with. You can actually go on LinkedIn and look up those people that you know that had your same MOS years ago or that you served with. You can look them up on LinkedIn and find many of them and connect with them. And then you can look at where they work at, with the company they're currently with, the company that they were with prior to that. So if the sky's the limit, if you just broaden your mind and become an agent on LinkedIn, not just someone that just has an account, the sky's the limit on how you, this open source platform, connect with people that can possibly open a door for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's where we kind of lead into this one right now, so as we're trying to go through a series of ways to do this, right? So now after you're trying to build that network. So let's talk about connection etiquette guidelines and engaging meaningfully, right? So I know folks like Jeff and myself, our LinkedIn is a busy place though. Like if I log in, there's always going to be unread messages, right? There's always going to be new connection requests and so forth. So let's talk about that a little bit and how to, like, if you're reaching out to folks, how do you actually get that engagement in return, right? How do you pique our interest to also respond to you, right? So always add a personalized note. It shows effort and professionalism, and also adds credibility to you as a connection, right? It lets me know how you ran into me, right? So if you say, hey, I was on Mission Transition, then I know you're probably not a nefarious actor, right? So those type of things. Like I said, mention why you're connecting. Hey, just looking at roles at Peraton, want to connect, make sure I'm connected up with you guys. Keeping in mind, hey, I'm transitioning to cybersecurity, admire your work, I'd love to connect and follow your insights, that type of thing. Short and sweet, lets us know why you're connecting with us, right? Probably one of our big ones, though, this is kind of one of the no-nos in connection requests, right? And I know between Jeff and I, we get a lot of these, okay? A lot of folks will reach out to us. Brian, I'm looking for a job. Here's my resume. Let me know what I'm qualified for. Nothing. You're not qualified for anything, because I'm not searching for jobs for you. I'm not going to spend 2 hours searching the job board for you. No, you're a job, you're a candidate. You're supposed to be doing that work, right? And I really don't know what you're interested. That gives me no information about what you're really interested. I don't necessarily know where you want to work, what level of work you want to be doing it in. It's too much of a guessing game for us to do that. So the proper way, engaging meaningfully, we'll talk about that. I think that's one of the last slides, but we'll mention it right now since we are talking about connecting, right? Is, those are least to get a response. I do get plenty of those. And usually my response is not, hey, here's a job. Are you interested in it? No, it's usually like, this isn't enough information. I need you to go look at our job boards. I send them on the mission of what they have to do to get the time of mine, right? So because the people that are giving me that information are getting my time. So that's a big one, so connecting with intent, right? On what you've done and that stuff. And this will also help with your algorithm here. So when we talk about engaging meaningfully on LinkedIn, right? That's where you start to get seen, you pop up. And there's also a thing. So as a recruiter, say I'm doing my Boolean string searches, I'm looking for, a logistics guy. I put in what I'm looking for. It'll tell me, hey, Jeff's on. It basically tells me Jeff's on here regularly, so he's more likely to respond. And then, those people are bumped up on the list as well, and those things. And engaging on LinkedIn takes almost zero work, to be honest with you, because you have folks like Jeff and myself that are constantly making content of our own to put on there, right? So if you want to start out and just get some algorithm going, find career-like-minded content. If it's relevant to your career, all you got to do is like it and share it and say, hey, this was interesting. It doesn't even take much of that, right? It literally takes 10 seconds to do that, and you'll start bumping up in your algorithm. Responding to messages, though, too. So LinkedIn does determine if you respond to messages. So if somebody emails you with something that's not even relevant to you, like, hey, I'm not interested. It takes 10 seconds to do that. But it'll let LinkedIn will let us know who's engaging the platform and who's really not. Who am I wasting my time reaching out to that might not respond back in because they haven't logged in 6 weeks, that type of thing. So it does give us that information. But ideally, you'd want to add more thoughtful comments on posts that you make. Even using some of the AI tools. If you've got a thought, drop it in AI. Tell them, hey, make me a LinkedIn post on what I'm thinking here, and it'll help you do it. It doesn't even take that much. And oddly enough, I've had people, some people that think AI is the devil now or something like that. But I actually work at a company that has machine learning and AI tools. So they kind of ask us to use these on a very regular basis. And I had someone ask me, like, oh, imagine using AI to make a post. I was like, imagine not using it, I guess, and that kind of stuff. So, it's easy to do. Absolutely leveraging your veteran networks and alumni networks. We kind of touched it on the last slide, but the engaging meaningful, the connecting requests and engaging meaningfully are two of the biggest pieces of getting success out of LinkedIn, though, because that really engages your algorithm. It sets you out from others on LinkedIn, and it also lets the recruiters know that you're active at the same time. So it's a big one right there, in my opinion. Jeff, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, Brian, just to give you one word, it's just effort. You have to make an effort.
That's the best word, right?
Just make an effort. It's not just the job seeker making an effort. As you mentioned, Brian, we have to make an effort as well to attract people to engage our company, to attract people to like our postings. It's both sides. I mean, it takes effort to attract people to our company and to our positions. Well, you're going to have to do your part as well to attract people, recruiters, to want to respond to you, to inquire more about your background. But and a great point, Brian, I think you mentioned. I know this isn't an AI podcast, but I would tell you that should be in almost everything that you do, because I find myself explaining why you should be using. I commonly think now, I ask people, do you use AI? Especially when they're talking about LinkedIn. I'm like, do you use AI? And when I hear the word no, I'm like, well, why not? Like, we use it. Brian mentioned that as a company in Peraton, we use this is what we do. And so this is just an example. It may seem like a lot of stuff on this slide. It may seem busy. It may seem like a lot of effort, but the AI tools will help you to do these things. You may not be great at, typing introductions. Well, use those tools to help.
Yeah. It's really that easy. Yeah. But again, I think that's Jeff nailed it. The effort. Put a little effort into engaging and connecting meaningfully, and you'll be surprised. It'll start paying off for you.
Yes.
Then you'll end up like us, where it's like, I'm almost scared to log into LinkedIn someday. Well, I'm taking vacation next week, everybody. I don't want to see that when I come back, man. It's gonna be ugly. Let's talk about some job search hacks. So, definitely use some filters. If you know what Boolean strings are, or what some of the modifiers are, if you will, to help use some of the job filters. And I always tell folks, when you're searching, though, in a search bar, pretty much any platform, don't necessarily search just by a job title. So sometimes put these things in, quotation marks, whatever you're looking for, and then put an and after that. But use some of your skill sets instead. If you're Scrum Master, and Agile, eSafe, try using those keywords instead of saying Program Manager, Project Manager, because you're going to get a lot of stuff that's going to pop up. A lot's going to be irrelevant to you, but then use those filters to also narrow that down for maybe years of experience or degree required, those type of things. So there's hack tools out there to really, and once again, speaking of AI, if you're not sure how to do a Boolean string, it's just how it's spelled, Boolean. Is basically, you can jump onto AI and be like, hey, write me a Boolean string to look for this kind of job on LinkedIn, and it'll do that for you too.
Yes.
So, with these skills, it says fine with these skills, and that stuff, So, but even going to that company's careers website though too, is a big one. So if you're looking for roles at Peraton, go to our website. It'll show you our jobs that are listed. Now, one thing I want everyone to take away from this call though today, that's looking for a role, is you cannot apply to Peraton through LinkedIn. So, and that is like that for, I want to say 100% of the companies I've worked at over the past many years, is everyone see the quick apply or apply via LinkedIn. If you haven't come to the Peraton.com careers website and applied to that role, you have not applied to the role. So you have to go to the company website to apply. So it's a good rule of thumb, as I've said, that not one company that I've worked at could you do a quick apply and we got the application in our applicant tracking system, right? So that being said, we'd love you to work at Peraton, but it probably applies to other companies too. Well, I know it does. So if you've hit that quick apply button, realize you've probably never applied any of those. And another thing to think about though too, is if you're feeling kind of daunted by some of those numbers it'll show you on the quick apply, where it'll say, 850 people applied. I can assure you 100% as someone that's used LinkedIn as a recruiter, 150 people did not apply to that role. What happened is 100 people clicked somewhere on that thing. So I can tell you that. So still apply if you feel qualified. Go to the careers website. I do believe on some of ours, it's been a while since I looked, so don't hold me to it. If you hit the quick apply, I do believe it takes you to our careers page anyway, but I'm not 100% sure. I haven't checked lately. So keep that in mind. Setting alerts and staying ahead. This is absolutely vital to a job search. I know everybody hates getting some of those emails. I hate getting them too, but that sometimes you've got to be first in the game, So just to give some folks examples, we put roles out. It might pop on a Friday. It might open up on Friday. You can come in on Monday as the recruiter for that role and be like, oh, got 380 people applied to it already. That kind of thing. So being ahead of the game on that kind of stuff. Sometimes it takes a day or two for some of these to get some steam, and that's where connecting with folks like me and Jeff and myself can be beneficial to you, because then we can kind of get you looked at much faster and quicker as well. So that's why those alerts are key. You can sign up for those at Peraton. If you're on our careers website, you're on the search page. Underneath the filters thing, it'll say set up job alert. It's a blue button. So absolutely use that. So that's the way to get notified, because obviously no one's expecting you to search the job boards every day, right? And then last but not least, certainly on your LinkedIn, you'll see the open to work piece. Absolutely put that on there. I know some people are like, well, I don't want other people to see that I'm open for work. Maybe you don't want your current role to see the open for work or something like that. So it does have a privacy setting where only recruiters can see it. However, a recruiter, at your company would be able to see it as well. But I've been doing this a long time, and I've never had anybody be like, oh, they were mad I put myself open to work on LinkedIn. So, definitely do it. Tailor the preferences, on your roles, locations, job types, remote, hybrid, on-site. I know we get asked that kind of question a lot. Do we have remote roles? We do, but it's always clearance based almost. I can't say it's 100% rule of thumb, but the rule of thumb is almost the higher the clearance, the more requirement in office presence is going to be. If your role requires skiff work, chances are you're probably coming in 5 days a week, unless you change your skill sets. So, anything you want to add on this one, Jeff, on kind of some of the LinkedIn search hacks?
Those are some of the good tips. Also, Brian, the job alerts. I also posted that in the chat as well. So for those of you that are in the chat, I just posted that link. Timing is everything, as Brian mentioned. Whether it's a job alert, whether if say, for example, one of the Peraton recruiters that you're following, you're connecting with, or me and Brian repost a hot job they're looking to fill. If that position is posted and you see it, react quickly. You feel like you're a good match for it. Not only go to the Peraton careers page, but also if a Peraton recruiter posts a position on LinkedIn, that is a good person that you should be responding to really quickly after you apply. Immediately respond to that person. Don't just simply say, I saw this position posted on LinkedIn. Now let me up position and wait. Well, you just saw the person that probably originally posted the position is probably, especially if they have the title recruiter, talent acquisition specialist, there's a good chance that position belongs to him or her. But as Brian mentioned, timing is everything. A position can be posted, especially if it's an uncleared position. Say it only requires a secret or a public trust or no clearance at all. You're going to get probably triple amount of people that are applying for that particular position that's posted. So when you see it, timing is everything. Whether it was posted on a Friday, on the weekend, make a point to check those alerts to check those on a daily basis when you're searching for a job.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing I want to add on the back end of that, though, too, is when you're looking at roles, and you look at the requirements and everything like that, when you see, if it says it needs 15 years of experience, remember that's the minimum. So that's the minimum. So if you don't have 15, it's probably a shot in the dark in that sense, because if the other candidates are having 18, 19, 22 years of experience and you're underneath what the minimum posted was, do you really find yourself then to be the most qualified candidate we're probably going to be seeking at the same time? So just a quick one to turn that in there, though, too. So here's a big one. As a military and veterans team over here, we do a crazy amount of events. I think, I don't know what the final number was for us last year, but I think it was in the 130s, I think, 140.
Yeah.
Jeff,
140, yeah, close to 140.
Jeff keeps us busy, He's even busy. He goes to more events than I do, so I don't know, but as a total, it was like 140. So we really wanted to talk about how you, as someone that's going to career fairs, whether in person or virtual, how to really set yourself up for success with those so that you get the most bang for the time and energy, right? So typically before you go to a career fair, they'll tell you what companies are coming, know who you want to talk to and why. You might not know who we are, but know what companies you want to talk to and why you want to talk to them, right? Because the last thing you want to do is show up to a company's table or ask virtually online. So what do you guys do anyway? Okay. That's a frustrating question to answer in a sense, right? Because chances are it tells me that. I was like, well, you're probably not qualified for what we do then, if you're asking, because, we're somewhat known out there, right? I mean, we're pretty big. So it's like, if you're in this kind of industry, you know who we are. Update your resume, but have a digital version of that ready to go, though, too. I know me personally, I prefer digitally. So I don't really need you to hand me a resume. Just shoot me an email with it. And the reason for that is because now I've got you digitally. It's much easier for me to come to work then the next day, log into my, get into my email and see that you shot me your resume. So I'm going to respond back to you. Now we're directly connected. You can tell me what roles you replied to, and I can ask you for what information I need to advocate for you internally on that type of thing. So that's why digitally is the ideal way. And my idea with some folks, I can take this off, the hard copy resume though too, but then that requires more work for me though then, right? So that might take 3 or 4 days. So I'm like, all right, let me get to these ones. And, that I got to start typing, email addresses. And if you've seen a lot of email addresses, they're tough to type because people use the crazy ones. So they're long or,
and that's just effort, Brian. That sounds like a small, minute thing, but I would tell you it's for busy people in the talent acquisition field. That is a big task that many people make the mistake. Yeah, you should bring your hard copy to a career fair, but as Brian mentioned, that stack of resumes, they're secondary now, unless there's certain ones that you've identified that, hey, I have to reach out to this one.
Yeah.
Typing up stuff to make it simple, make it easier for the recruiter. Make everything easy for the recruiter. You get back, there's a message on LinkedIn, there's an email address that I don't care if it's both. I send it both places. Yeah. Now, if I'm on LinkedIn, I see it. If I'm on my email first, I see it. everything that you do in this process, think about the gatekeeper, because that's what the talent acquisition people make it easy for the gatekeeper. So as we're going over these, when Brian brings up these little small points, they seem minute, but they are really big as far as where you are in the queue when it comes to me responding.
Right. That's really what it is. You know, how important did you make yourself at the end of the day? Efficiently at the same time. You know, certainly practice your elevator pitch. I hate to call it an elevator pitch, but that's kind of just what you say, I guess. A quick synopsis: who you are, what you do, and what you're looking for. Hey, I'm a cybersecurity professional. You know, hey, I'm Brian, cybersecurity professional. I'm doing about 15 years now. Got a TSSCI with the CI Poly, and that immediately lets me know that second. I'm gonna be like, perfect. You absolutely fit. You know, some roles I know that we're gonna have open. Send me your. Then my response is usually send me your resume via email. Let me know we talked about this. You know, cybersecurity roles. And when I get back tomorrow, I'll show you exactly what I need to help advocate you for you. And it's just taken a lot of time, right? It takes so much less time, you know, and that's comes to mention though, where you want to be time management weary when you're there at the same time. You know, it's not uncommon for us to get someone to come up to talk, and 10, 12, 15 minutes, they want to talk, you know, which we get it, you know, but you got to be understanding, like there's other people that are waiting to talk to us though at the same time. So you usually want to try to keep that interaction, you know, just to 2-3 minutes, you know, that's kind of really all it needs to determine, you know, because that's what we're there for. This is a networking event. That's why they're usually called networking events, is we're just trying to connect, get a feel for each other. So we know, hey, yes, you're viable for our organization. Let's connect digitally and make some work happen here. Right.
So Brian, let me add a quick nugget too, Brian, and you mentioned it as a time saver. So while you're waiting in line to speak to Brian or myself at a career fair, you open up your ChatGPT if you've never heard of Peraton before. Ask it that or type in, what is Peraton? I'm at a job fair. Give me a quick summary of what this company is and what they do. So now you've already got an introduction on your phone, so you don't have to waste your valuable time asking myself and Brian, what is Peraton? I've never heard of you guys. What do you do? You've already got them. So even while you're waiting in line to speak to a representative, do your homework. You could be searching the careers page. If there's 5 people ahead of you in line, you could be scanning the careers page, looking for opportunities. That's a match. Then when you get there, you can say, hey, I saw a position there. I think I'm a match. Can you give me a little bit more background, or can you connect me to the person? These are just some tips on, Brian mentioning up just how to use those AI tools to help you. All right, Brian, I hate to interrupt, but keep going, man.
No. That was great information. I was about done with this one anyway. You know, and that's what, you know, I think that's the big takeaway is just efficiency, you know, when you do these type of things. And, you know, as an example, I know me and Jeff do this every career fair. We're networkers. That's what we do, you know. So we always say, connect with me on LinkedIn. Every event we go to, every class or resume thing we do, always say, and connect with us on LinkedIn. You should absolutely be doing that. I give out so many cards. I can go to a career fair, stand there with Jeff, give out 45, 50 business cards, talk to, you know, 60, 70 people, and have 3 LinkedIn connection requests at the end of the career fair. So you're like, how hard are these folks really putting in the effort to get these roles they want, you know? So because that's how you expand your thing over time. That's how you expand your network over time. So like, we're the type of people, when we go to career fairs, we're networking still too. I go to other tables and I'm like, hey, let me get your card. I come home the next day. Let me find them on LinkedIn, you know, because they're like-minded professionals.
Yep.
And last but not least, we're about to go into Q&A here, folks. Thanks for sticking with us. So this is kind of a, you know, kind of a checklist on how to reach out to anybody realistically. But, you know, so if it's your first time reaching out to us, you're going to reach out to us on LinkedIn or, you know, our military connect at peraton.com, or reaching out to either of us directly. If it's your first time, always attach your resume, because we're either going to add it to our applicant tracking system, which also makes you searchable for jobs. It lets us know if you've already applied to anything, because we can add it in there. It's going to be like, oh, hey, Jeff's already applied to 2 or 3 roles, you know. Provide those role ID numbers you've already applied to, though, which ones are active on your mind. Hey, Jeff, I applied to this role. Here's how I'm qualified for. Add the qualification bullets. If you see the requirements and desired qualifications, add those bullets in your email. Say, this is how I meet each one of these. Allow time for response, of course. As we mentioned, we do go to a lot of events, that type of thing. We do take time off too and stuff. So, certainly allow, some time for response. I usually say a good rule of thumb is probably 48 hours, kind of depending on what we've got going on. And last but not least, kind of as we had already mentioned, earlier in the podcast, avoid asking for available positions. That's probably the biggest red flag for me when I start working with somebody. Like, well, here's my resume. What jobs do you have? That shows such little lack of effort that you're just trying to hand the softball off to me to find you work. And that's not time efficiency for us in the same time. So that's kind of the biggest one right there. Attach your resume, include roles you've applied to, add some qualification bullets, and give us a little bit of time to respond. We're not the type of folks that leave unread messages for 2 years in our inbox or something like that. So, we're very responsive. We'll tell you exactly what you need to be told. If you apply to a role and we look it up and we look at your resume and be like, hey, I don't think you're going to be qualified for this because of A, B, or C. Look at another role. They'll let me know you've applied to it. We can get the qualification bullets put together, and I can use that to send directly over to the hiring manager, because that's how we kind of work around here. We kind of concierge your applications through the process. So that's why we need this kind of information, because it's our reputation too, right? So we don't send forward folks that, are underqualified for roles. Good to go. Anything you want to add on?
Yeah, one thing also, Brian, is the great thing about including those job ID numbers, and this is an added bonus of taking the extra steps to connecting with recruiters to ask for assistance. Sometimes that particular position you may have applied for may have been filled by an internal employee, and you may have, for example, the position may have said requires a poly. Most of the time, our positions will not say if it requires a full scope poly. It'll just say requires a poly. So if the position requires a full scope poly and you only have a CI poly, that might be the reason why you weren't selected. And sometimes, as the internal employees, we can see that if a position has been canceled, if it was a proposal, it's pending, so you want to continue looking. Those are the benefits of connecting with a person within a company, a recruiter, to kind of get this type of information that can better, keep you moving. So you can say, okay, I understand you guys didn't win the contract, or the position's there's an offer already extended for this person, or I didn't have the correct clearance level when I applied for this position. So, don't waste that communication time when you get, because I tell many people many times, don't waste your transaction with me, because if you do, you'll go back in the queue again. Because
that's true. Very true.
I'm constantly responding to people. And when you say something like Brian mentioned, let me know if you guys got a job that's a match. That's, you're going to get a response. And if you have another response, you're back at the queue, you're back at the bottom again, because right now on LinkedIn, I'm responding to the next person up. So just be thoughtful, be purposeful when you get the attention of a recruiter, because I know a lot of people say I've reached out to people, nobody responds. So sometimes you have to reach out to 2 or 3 recruiters in a company to get a response. Whatever it takes, you got to do what it takes.
And, to add a little context on that to why, connecting so properly as possible is required on most. I can't speak for every company, but, I here at Peraton, we get a lot of traffic though. So, we're getting anywhere from, 50, 60, 70,000 applications per month. So you can't give everyone a response at that rate. So the folks that have put initiative and effort are the ones that do get the responses much sooner and stuff like that. So not that we can respond to all 50 to 70 directly. However, you should get responses from our applicant tracking system if you've been reviewed, not selected, or, went with another candidate type thing at the same time. So that's why that's very important, because I think our team alone probably talks to several thousands of people a year.
Yes.
So many thousands, I don't know, probably 10,000 people a year just the three of us alone
Yeah.
on just events and talking to people and just managing that email traffic alone is difficult. So that's why it's important. So we'll just jump right into it. Appreciate everyone that has stuck with us today. We're not going to do the conclusion. We'll just jump right into it. So we appreciate everyone that's stuck with us so far. I know it's been the two of us. Brent usually does our Q&As on the inbox as we're going. I did see Jeff was in there a little bit, but so this is our open Q&A right now. So certainly feel free to type in the chat box there any questions any might have, anything related to LinkedIn, talent acquisition, maybe not specific roles here at Peraton, but applying to things or anything we can answer. You got a couple of really experienced fellas here. Scroll through some things.
David M had a comment. Example of Boolean search, cybersecurity roles, cybersecurity analyst or security engineer or ISSO. Yes, you definitely have to think out the box and not just be so boxed in when it comes to searching for certain titles. You can put in skills, certification. You almost have to be, when you're searching, you almost have to be a recruiter. I mean, even when you're searching,
you do. You really do.
Yeah, it's filtering. The one thing about when I hear people talk about recruiters using AI to determine what candidates or disqualifying candidates, filtering happens in every single thing that you do. When you are planning a vacation, you're filtering. You're putting in the location, you're putting in a dollar amount. Don't go over $10,000. 7 days. I need a rental car. I need, you're doing.
I like that comparison.
You're filtering everything. Anybody that has an Amazon account, you are filtering. You're saying 4 stars. It has to be no more than $100. Everybody does filters. You have to do it for the sake of time. So when you're doing your search and your Boolean search, you're doing filters as well. You're putting in locations. You're in the Washington, D.C. area. You don't want to just search for cybersecurity roles in LinkedIn because now you're getting positions all over the country. So you have to do filters. Yeah. Just like recruiters we filter, you have to be the same way when you're searching and when you're making sure that you're searching for jobs that line up with what you're doing. And that's the reason why I think David had a good example of the Boolean search. Yeah. So thank you, David.
And I really find that to be an effective way to search for jobs, though, too. Because when you look at job titling, I've worked at many companies over the years, and every company called the same job something else sometimes. I might be a technical recruiter at one company, then I'm a talent acquisition business partner, then I'm a full desk recruiter. But it's the same job realistically. So it's putting in those skills in that sense.
Yes.
Also help you maybe find jobs that might not be as popular, if you will, because if everybody's typing in cybersecurity engineer, when they're searching, they're finding all those big jobs that are popping up then though too. All the, they're getting the same search results practically, right? Versus if you're, tightening yours up a little bit, the goal is to really have less come up in the search because they should be highly relevant to your skills now though too.
Yes. Because if you search for something, like I said, on Amazon and 1,000, you're thinking, I'm not going through all 1,000 of these.
Right. Like who's going to do that?
I got to shorten this up with some keywords or some things. So I'm not going through 1,000. And so that's the same way when recruiters are searching for even people on LinkedIn, and they're doing a Boolean search and say 150,000 people pop up that says cybersecurity specialist. He's got to lower that. He's got to put in TSSCI, Security Plus, CCNA. He has to put in some things. He's going to put in the location. So it goes from 150,000 to now maybe 1,500. He may say that's too many. And so you have to kind of be that same way.
Absolutely.
Brian, you mentioned one time about someone applying for 100 jobs a week, thinking something's wrong with that. You remember that?
Yeah. Well, I always tell everyone though, that's a red flag. Like if you're applying to that much work and you're not getting a response after applying, like I one guy, I swear, like 250 applications. And I was like, okay, he was like, he was getting just, a little discouraged. I can say it. Let me put it that way. He says, I can't get into Paratime to save my life, man. Applied to like 250 roles. I looked them up, and I was like, well, every role. I haven't looked at all 250 at this point, though, right? Like, I'm just like, dude, I mean, I looked at like the first 10, man, and every role you weren't remotely qualified for. You didn't have the requisite clearance even out the gate, that type of things. Well, I thought, you don't want to be maneuvering on thinks you're qualified. If you look at a role, you should be able to say, I think it's kind of morphed over the past decade, Jeff. Tell me what you think. We used to say back in the day, if you were like 70% qualified for a role, you might be good to go. It's not that kind of job market anymore. I mean, if you don't feel like you're 100% qualified for a job, I don't know. It's going to depend on the organization. It's going to depend on the industry. But what I can tell you is if you're looking at, all the big contract companies, if you're looking at the Northrops, the Lockheeds, SAICs, Deloittes and stuff like that, our contracts tell us what your experience has to be. So we can't say it's anything other than that. So when you see those minimum qualifications and it says, minimum 8 years experience, you must have the minimum of 8 years experience. And also think about that's a minimum qualifier. That is the minimum you have to even be considered. So how would you think you're going to fare against a candidate pool that may have 16 years of experience and those type of things as well? So do you kind of agree with that, Jeff, that it's kind of not a 70% rule anymore?
I can remember when I got out of the military, bro, I said stuff like, if I had 70% of, and I would say stuff like, I'm trainable. I should be able to get a TSSCI. Right. I shouldn't have, people say stuff like, I have a secret, but I got good background. I shouldn't have a problem getting a TSSCI. Or I have a TSSCI. It shouldn't be a problem with me passing a poly. If the position said required a must-have and you don't have it, then don't waste your hard-earned effort and time applying for a position that said it required a must-have poly and you don't have one. Right. Then you've wasted 45 minutes or whatever you spent time tailoring your resume, and you missed a crucial piece of a requirement that they must have. And as Brian mentioned, in this market that we're in now, and not to be discouraging to you guys, sometimes you may have to pivot and maybe take a lesser role, to be employed, and maybe maybe internally apply for a position with the company. I know at Peraton, as long as you've been with the company 6 months, you can apply again internally to another position. So I've seen people have pivoted, taking a lesser role. They thought that maybe they were a program manager. Some have to take a step back and maybe consider a project or a lesser role.
Or section lead.
Something a little lesser to get in, to learn, to be mentored. And then, you never know that person that was your supervisor that was over you, he moved on to bigger and better things. And now there's an opening. And what better person than to replace him than his predecessor? So that's just an example. We've seen it many times. People have been promoted within Peraton that came. I've seen recruiter assistants, recruiter admins in a position for 2 years. And then all of a sudden, they've learned it because they've supported recruiters. Now there's a talent acquisition position. They apply for it, and it's an internal position. Yeah. They get it. Haven't you seen it, Brian? We see it all.
Yeah, absolutely. We work with them.
Yeah.
I see we have a question from David. That's a great question. He says, if you apply to one role with a customized resume and then apply to another role with a different customized resume, will each position have the correct resume, or does the second replace the first? You nailed it right there. So it's pretty much like that anymore when you look at applying to roles at pretty much any company digitally anymore. A lot of us use a platform called iCIMS. You'll see it on just about any company you're applying for anymore, iCIMS in their thing. So iCIMS creates a profile for you that houses one resume. So if you do make a customized resume and apply to, one particular role, it's more of a help desk tier 1 or something. You customize a resume for that. And then now you apply to a SOC analyst role, but you made some changes. The last resume you uploaded into the system is the resume that's visible for all roles in that system. So So it's usually a good idea, or at least how I tell folks to do it. If you've got different skill sets you're using, you know, either focus for a couple of days on one particular skill set, let some time go, and then jump into the next skill set. And also a good way though too, if you're really running into that to a company where you're kind of qualified for two different profiles like that, getting connected with someone directly is the easiest way to battle that.
Yes.
I can tell you how Jeff and I work it. If you applied to a help desk tier 1 force and, you know, they reviewed you, but said, you know, we're not interested. And then I'm get back to you and I'm like, hey, Jeff, you know, apply to this role now that, you know, and you're like, oh, but I'm good for this SOC analyst role. I'm going to say, okay, apply to that one then. Give me this information, how you're applied to it. And I just send that over. You know, I don't say go in and, you know, rewriting your resume and this and that, unless it's such a huge difference. And where you want to think about making two different kinds of career profiles, and I run into this a lot with folks that want to do program and project management, is those are tough to get into pretty much anywhere, right? I mean, there's not 15 project managers on every project, right? There's maybe one, and then maybe a deputy. And I mean, there's versus an individual contributor. So I always tell folks that are looking for that, be prepared though. So have your project management role and have your individual contributor resume, you know, because they're going to be stacked different, because one's probably going to be more technical or skill set focused, where the other one's going to be management focused and, you know, Scrum and all this kind of stuff, you know. So yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, good point.
So Reba says, after leaving the job 30 plus days, what's it take to reopen it? Any tips on how to present the clearness status and where from security contractors for perspective? Well, status. Well, what I can tell you, if we're talking about like the status of a role being open, what I can tell you, as you know, I can't speak for every organization, but here at Peraton, we don't have roles that are open for 180 days typically. That's pretty rare unless they're very niche roles. So we pretty much fill our roles, and I think we're down to like 30. We're 30 days. We do like 30 days.
That's the goal. Yep.
From to hire, in that sense. So if you see a role that's been open 45, 60 days, chances are it's probably not still available. You might be looking at it on another platform. If it is on our platform, what you can keep in mind though is a role does stay listed until it has a start. So they don't come off until someone starts. So it might take them, you know, so if it was on there for 2 or 3 weeks before they got to the higher phase, and that person then doesn't start till, you know, 2 or 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, depend, that job could still be on there, but technically they're not reviewing anybody anymore because they've already made a hire. They're just waiting for the hire to start.
And
but
also,
the best way to
Brian,
figure that out is to reach out to us.
Yeah, and also, Brian, that the great thing about reaching out to a recruiter is that particular position may have been a proposal position.
Right.
So if it's out there for an extended amount of time, they're still gathering resumes. If it's a very critical role that has some really hard requirements, they may leave it out there to acquire more candidates. So just also realize some positions may be still in proposal, where we're pending an award, or it's been awarded and scenario it's in protest right now. So there's a lot of different things that you, as the public, sometimes you can't always see. And that's the benefit of networking and reaching out to people. When you get a contact within a person, they're communicating with you, that's gold, because they can answer a lot of questions where you're not holding your breath on this particular position where you're a perfect fit for, and you may be, and the recruiter sees that you're a perfect fit, and they're just waiting. We got another month or two before we find out if we've been awarded that contract. So there's always some type of explanation to a position that you don't always get from from the public's view.
And then there was a second part to it though too. I did catch how to present the clearness and status for security clearness. If you're talking about like how do you indicate to us what security clearance that you have, it would be, or if you're waiting on a security clearance, that you would have to use whoever you were already connecting with. I know folks like us, you know, we wouldn't be able to locate any clearance status. We don't have access to do that kind of information.
Right.
But if you're how to present it to us though would be, we always tell folks to put it in your contact information, where it's your name, city and state, contact number, email, and clearance status, active TSSCI, active secret. You don't want to get in the habit of putting, secret eligible if you don't have it, because that's a good way to annoy a lot of people, to be honest, because I might think you have a secret, didn't catch eligible, or I put in my Boolean string search, I said, I'm looking for a secret. And now I'm reaching out to you. And then of course you're reaching back because you think I'm going to get you a secret clearance. And, it just turns into wasted communication in that sense too.
That's a good point, Brian, because I see TSSCI eligible. That does not mean that you have a clearance. Now, let me clarify how sometimes that can be interpreted.
Right.
Sometimes most people understand how clearances work because the clearance comes with the billet that you're in. So if you're in, say, I go to Joint Base San Anacostia a lot, and a lot of those people have TSSCI clearances with CI Poly because they're in that billet. Now, when they transition out of the military, they're no longer in a billet that requires a TSSCI because they're not employed anymore. They're out of the military. You still want to put on your resume and your LinkedIn profile, if you choose to, active TSSCI with CI Poly. Because I've had some people say, I took it off because I'm no longer in that position. I said, no, that is still your clearance. It'll be picked up by Peraton. It'll be turned on, just to make it simple for you guys that may not understand. Peraton will reactivate that clearance. They'll turn it on, and they'll cage it. They'll house your clearance. But if you have a clearance, you have a TSSCI, you're unemployed, you still have a TSSCI clearance.
Absolutely.
Right.
And then we got Nakiba says, if you're looking for an entry-level junior position, how do you work through not having any clearance since you aren't in a role that requires it and or in school? Well, I can tell you, I'll let Jeff do some of the ones too. I can tell you from my perspective, filtering out roles that require a clearance. And if you're looking for a role that will get you a clearance, I would highly suggest using Boolean strings where you're putting in ability to obtain in one of parts of your string, because then it'll bring up roles that have the ability to obtain a clearance. Because most companies or organizations will put that in there if that role will get you a clearance. Because if you read it on the website and it says, active TSSCI, that means it's a dead requirement. You either have it or you don't. And if you don't, you're not qualified. So you can use that. But other than that would be looking for roles then that don't require a clearance or a public trust. Keep in mind, the public trust isn't a clearance. It's an enhanced governmental background check. So you can work, you can apply to roles that are looking for a public trust that don't say ability to obtain though. It's like, give you another.
Yeah. And Brian, I mean, you kind of hit it you kind of got it right. When it comes to people that don't have a clearance, and if you're fortunate enough to find a DoD contractor and they are looking to fill a position, say a tier 1 help desk, and no clearance required, I would consider that job, because while you're an employer there, there may be a possibility while you're working there, you can ask, hey, is it possible that you guys can put me in for a clearance? Pending, and it's no guarantee that can happen, but I would tell you, I've seen many people that have gone into a company and that company initiated them a security clearance while they're an employee. I've seen it many times. I had a friend of mine, he was an Amtrak operator, and he took a few IT courses and certifications, and he came in an uncleared role. And that particular company initiated him his clearance came back in 4 months. 3 years passed by, the guy's walking around with a TS clearance with a CI Poly, because the company continued to upgrade him as he moved up in position. Now that's that don't happen often, but yeah. The reason why I mentioned this story is no one has a crystal ball and knows how their journey is going to end. And sometimes you have to get off the beaten path and do something a little different. But if you're entry level, and if you find a position that doesn't require a clearance and it's a DoD contractor, and that's your path to get a clearance, accept the role. Try to get in that company.
Absolutely. And I also tell folks, look more commercially though, then too. That's where you can look at maybe more like the Microsoft, AWS type places, because they tend to do a little more entry level and junior level on clearance roles at the same time. That's my opinion anyway. That's where I've seen most of the folks that we've worked with over the years that are doing career transitions seem to end up at some of those kind of places. And then David says, does having a referral do anything for the candidate, or does that only help the person that gave the referral? That's a great question, David. I mean, I can't speak for every organization. Every organization runs it differently. But what I can tell you is here at Paratime, having an employee referral is absolutely a step up as a candidate. We actually have a full-time person employed that reaches out to every referral in the company. So I can tell you that's probably not an easy job, but she's part of our operations team actually. So having a referral, it actually tags you in the system if an employee refers you, because if I look at our applicant tracking system, it tells us where you originated from, where your application originated from. And if it's an employee referral, it says employee referral on there specifically. And we are kind of, a lot of our talent acquisition folks are, kind of taught like, hey, look at the employee referrals first kind of thing, if you can. But it does help the employee as well. So that's why we talk about doing this networking that we just talked about. That's why it's so important to get that employee referral, find that Peraton employee that's similar to you, engage correctly, and you can get that referral, and that absolutely increases your chances. And the beautiful thing about it is if you get a referral, Jeff and I can still work with you and still push you through the systems, because that other employee may not be able to. So we can still do what we do while you have the employee referral.
Right. That was a situation that kind of comes to mind. There was a friend of mine, we've been knowing each other, got out of the IT field and went into real estate, and the real estate market crashed. He came back, but he was out a while. He lost his clearance. Skilled IT guy, lost his clearance. He saw a help desk position, tier 1, applied, didn't require clearance, and he wasn't selected. He was a little shocked because of his experience. And so I reached out to the recruiter and said, hey, is there a particular reason why you didn't pick him? He's like, well, the salary is pretty low. So I had to explain to the recruiter, hey, he's a retired veteran. He's 100% disabled veteran, so he has a disability pension. And his wife's a GS-14. He just wants to get back into the IT field. Money is not a big issue with him. He needs to get back in the IT field. And this is a path, so he's okay with whatever the salary was. So after that discussion with that recruiter, he said, okay, we'll push him to the hiring manager. And today he's a Peraton employee. Now, will he stay at tier 1? We don't expect him to, right? But that was his pathway in. He would have never found out why he was not selected if he hadn't reached out to me. And it's the same way with any other point of contact that you find in the organization, because some people may just assume you don't want it because the salary is too low, and you may be okay with saying, hey, I'm okay with that. I just need the experience, and I need to find a job.
Absolutely, man. So we got a question from Rachel. She says, how do you suggest we list our clearance on our resume if we are not currently employed? Well, I'd say two things. If it's still active, though, like if you say you just transitioned out or what have you, or you were in a contract role that, they got furloughed off of, because they do that, right? Especially like with Doge and all that. But as long as your clearance is still active, like you're kind of in that 24-month window of when you were in that TSSCI role, you still have an active clearance. So I would list it as active on your resume for sure. Yeah. And in your contact information as well.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Because if you're looking for those TSSCI roles, I know one of the other podcasts we talk about the 10-second read that you get from a recruiter. So you really only have about 10 seconds to catch our attention with your resume. So if you're applying to cleared roles, you definitely want that right there in your contact information. Yeah. So it's probably going to be a qualifier or a disqualifier in a lot of the roles you're applying to, I'm assuming.
And to add to that, Brian, don't make the assumption that a recruiter is going to call you or reach out to you and ask you what type of clearance do you have. Even if you've listed the agency that you just come off of a contract, whether it's you put down FBI, NSA. Sometimes people don't actually put those organizations or those customers, but if someone can look at your resume, and me and Brian have been doing this long enough to know that, okay, this person's coming supporting a contract that's probably needs a clearance. And if you don't list that on your resume because you've just recently got laid off or the position ended, don't assume I'm going to call you and ask you what clearance level do you currently have. You may not ever get anybody contact you. They just may.
I would almost say expect no one to ever call you and ask you. I've never called once and asked somebody if they have a clearance.
Yeah.
Because I figure you should be listed on there. I mean, if it's a requirement, you should have requirements listed on your resume.
Yes. I've had some people that have told me that, I didn't want to put my clearance on there. Just speaking. I'm speaking to people at TAP offices and they walk up to me with their resume. I'm like, where's your clearance at? He's like, yeah, I didn't put it on there for security reasons. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. You didn't put your clearance on your resume for security reasons?
Yeah.
Big mistake. I had to tell him you better fix that real quickly. So
right. There's that big rule of thumb, because I see Jay's got a question. We'll get to it here in a sec. But there's that big the rule of thumb out here is never assume somebody else is going to understand anything on your resume, though. If it's not clear and concise and very relevant to a job description about your qualifications, never assume that the person looking at it's going to be able to correlate the differences. Because what you're then asking for is time, and we don't provide a lot of time. You got 10 to 15 seconds to really look for us to gauge. We have 400 resumes to look at. You've literally got 10, 15 seconds. Is it or not? So assumption is the worst thing. So don't ever assume. Make it loud and clear. Make it loud and clear. So Jay asks, if I meet all of the requirements in the job description except for the security clearance, would I still be considered for the position? Depends. Does it say or ability to obtain? So if it just says a clearance, chances are no, because most companies will put or ability to obtain. So it'll say secret and or ability to obtain and maintain or something like that. So I can tell you for Peraton, I can speak directly for Peraton, and all our roles that will get you a clearance, they will say ability to obtain in it. And if it doesn't say that, it's a no-go, except for public trust. Public trust is not one that requires you can start without having a public trust in that sense. So if it doesn't say that, I can tell you for us, that's why you can only officially apply at roles at Peraton by applying through our careers website, because you'll have qualifications questions it's going to ask you. And one of those might be, do you have an active secret clearance? And if you click no, more than likely within an hour or two or within 24 hours, you're going to get that email that says review not selected. Right.
Yes.
So,
the words are clear, and these are the words to remember. Required, must have, able to obtain, and preferred.
Yeah.
When you're looking at clearance, most of them, 90% of them are going to say required or must have, able to obtain, or preferred.
And on the preferred, what I will add to that, because I'm glad you added that in there, Jeff. I always forget about that one. What I've seen, the only time I typically see preferred is when they'll say must have a secret TSSCI preferred. Right.
Yeah.
So, and then what you got to think about though, too, even when you're looking at roles like that. So if you have the secret, but they prefer a TSSCI and you're just scratching at the qualifications barely, you better hope nobody with the TSSCI applies and has better qualifications, because you're then now not the most qualified candidate.
Yes. Right.
In that sense. What do we got? David's full of questions. I've noticed the salary for Peraton positions are lower than other companies. Interesting. The difference has been fairly large, $60 an hour with an expectation is 80 to 90. Yeah, I'm not sure if I can answer that. I mean, we are highly competitive in our markets. I can tell you that. I would have said it would have been quite the opposite. But what you'll also learn out, though, real quick, Peraton is a very large organization. We have a significant amount of benefits at this company. We give out great amount of paid time off. So $60 an hour versus $80 an hour. I'm going to assume if you're looking at a smaller, it's probably a smaller company that doesn't give much paid time off, doesn't have quite the medical benefits packages that we have and stuff like that. Because we give 20 or 21 paid days off here
21.
for every employee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for every employee. 6 federal holidays and 4 floating holidays for every employee. So pretty much 30 days off a year at that rate. That's where you might see some disparity, because a smaller company or some other companies don't give quite that kind of benefits on some of those things. So obviously it's got to come from somewhere. But in my opinion, I don't know, I've gotten a lot of people employed here and our salaries are highly competitive.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you that. I don't know where you're getting those rates from. If you're looking at like the online thing, like if you look at some of the roles online, it'll say from $88,000 a year to $240,000 a year. That's not the actual pay range they're looking to hire within. I can tell you that. That is like, I can't remember exactly how that's all figured out, but it's based on some other factors where they're probably never actually going to hire someone at the absolute max salary that position is listed for in that sense. So what you can kind of do is when you see that, probably go towards a midpoint of what you're seeing listed is what they're probably looking to actually hire for that role. What do you think, Jeff?
It is. I mean, Peraton is pretty competitive. I believe if Peraton was just me personally, I think if we were a low ball company and then it'd be a revolving door, and a lot of people wouldn't be trying to come to Peraton. If we were if that was our reputation of a low ball company, trust me, we wouldn't be highly sought after people trying to come here. And the type of people that we are filling in our contract roles, those types of people, they don't necessarily come cheap. People don't always take low ball offer when they can go to a competitor and get something, a lot more. So we do market analysis. And so it's not like we just pick numbers out of the air and we just decide this is what we're going to pay people. We do market analysis. There are certain requirements, certain rates that we are not allowed to go beneath on contracts by law, by DOD. So
I mean, that's by our own corporate law too. Like I was going to say, like our own corporate our own internal corporate kind of rules. If you are like, what I can tell you is, there is a bottom line though. Like if somebody came in and said, "I'll take $50,000 under that," we'd be like, "We can't pay you that," even if we couldn't. Like it would literally it would red flag the whole system that this person is underpaid on the rate package, and it would have to literally go to a vice president for them to understand why we're paying someone below the standard rate the organization pays for a particular role as well. So there are safeguards and protections about that. I can tell you, Peraton.
And we're audited every single year. So thing about audits, if you're doing some illegal practices, it'll get you in trouble. It'll get you have your ability to compete for contracts. Those things can be removed. So we're not that type of company. No company has the max and has cornered the market on being paid the most for every single position. Sometimes you get a contract that's a low bid that was awarded, that was low. It wasn't a high price point that we went after. And there's margins, profit margins, and so forth. So it's a bigger picture than that. But I would tell you, we are not the low ball company.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I like the question. I really love the question because I can tell you how it affected me in the past. Was I took a director position one time at a smaller organization. Thought the pay was going to be great, blah blah blah, and the benefits package was awful. Like it barely came with no time off or unlimited unpaid time off. Now who does that though, right? So even though I was making $30,000 or more, if I took 2 vacations off, not to mention you're losing $500, $600, $700, $800 a day plus your vacation. Each vacation turns into 10 grand, whether what you're doing or not, because you're losing the pay and you have to pay for the vacation. So let me tell you, those are real things to consider. $20 an hour might seem like a big deal, but you start adding in those kind of things.
Yeah. What is the medical? What is the medical provider? How much are you paying in copays if you have a family?
And they didn't do
Do
like
they have eye
yearly,
care insurance? Do they have eye care insurance? It's a major benefits package. It's a lot of money, and Paraton has an excellent
it does.
package when it comes to mental health.
Dog insurance.
It's all kind of things. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those things really add up. Like, cause I remember when it happened to me, I remember I was mad at myself. I was like, how did I not catch this when I got this contract offer? Because I was like, I can't take any time off. Like, what am I to do? Like, nobody does that, So that's how you get finagled into that,
Yeah. We've all been sold a bill of goods before too, Brian. I always tell people this all the time. Recruiters get sold too. We get, sometimes didn't do our due diligence in researching and asking the right questions. I know many times I made a decision where I've just looked for the highest dollar amount and then found out that, man, I didn't do my homework.
Yeah, no, yeah, I've hit that too. Because then David Assey says, is the salary listed on the job description flexible? Absolutely, though. I mean, don't get me wrong. Every job, why you see some of those bands that are so large, because say it's a cybersecurity technical specialist, there's going to be tiers of that. There's going to be like a tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you fall within a tier 4, there's a specific amount they have to pay for a tier 4. So they can't pay you like a tier 1 if you fall in tier 4 based off education, level of experience, all that kind of stuff plays into that question. So of course the salary's got some flexibility, but they can't pay you a T5 level salary, if you will, if all the pieces don't align, education, experience, then they don't pay you in the T5 band already, that type of thing, if that makes kind of sense. I like David's question too on this, the AT&T thing, because we're here in, Northern Virginia, DC area, and we get a lot of folks that come from Amazon. Amazon they hire a whole bunch and then let go of a whole bunch, hire, let go, hire, let go. And we get a lot of folks that come from, Amazon and Microsoft and what have you. And like, well, I was making, $350 at Amazon and getting, all these stocks and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, well, at some point you just have to tell folks, well, you're not working at Amazon anymore, man. Like that's not what happens in 98% of the other places I hear. So, you have to make adjustments. We're not going to be able to make those adjustments for you as an organization in that sense.
And I think I would tell you, I've watched that trend, and it happens to everyone. I've seen people, even in our field, I've seen people go from recruiter to recruiter program manager to recruiter director, and the company makes cuts, and they're cutting a lot of overhead, directors, positions, recruiters. And I've seen people come and say, hey, I'm okay with a recruiter, a technical recruiter position. Because sometimes people expect to be at a company 15 years and then, as David mentioned, go to another company and find another director position. And there may not be a lot of director positions from what you were in. But I've seen on LinkedIn, people have gone, as Brian mentioned, you go from recruiter to recruiter manager to a director because you were in a small company with 50 people. And then there's no director positions at Paraton, but there's a recruiter manager or recruiter lead that you qualify for. And so I just think in the job market, people just have to be able to pivot and for those that just say, I will only accept this type of role. I've seen people where they've come kind of groveling back saying, I've been out of work 6 months. I'm willing to I'll take that position. And so sometimes you have to land somewhere and rebuild again.
Yeah. At least take some of the pressure down. Maybe not off, maybe you're not right back at there, but at least take some of the pressure of putting steady flow income back in at the same time. And there's a whole bunch of things to look at though, especially when it comes to salary, do they do yearly percentage increases, that type of stuff. Those are things that add up. Do they do retention bonuses?
Yes.
Type of things. Does your skill qualify for retention bonus and all that? But those are questions to ask a recruiter, right? when you're getting down to the nitty gritty parts of a job, talking about salary. Ask, if they say $60 an hour, but we also do A, B, C, D, E in this role where, because the other example for me when I was paid more, I also had to work a crap load of weekends. So $60 and that other like 30 grand a year turned into like a negative 20 practically, because now I was working all the time. I didn't have weekends off every weekend. I was expected to work 60 plus 70 hours a week, right? Versus 40, those type of things. So those are all things for me, it's a work-life balance, pay balance match though.
Yeah. I mean, and this is not a question that you always ask during the interview process, but if you're discussing the rates, maybe
an offer,
offer may be able to, they may tell you, hey, you know what, our team works from home 3 days a week or 4 days a week, or we only come into the office twice a week and we all rotate. That's a value to you if you're in a high metropolitan area like Washington, D.C. I mean, with gas prices and with tolls, that's a big significance with maintenance on your car, and so it's a bigger picture. I think you have to be smarter than just looking at how much money are they paying.
End game, right?
Yeah, the end game. How is this is this short term? Is this a new contract? Is it 4 years left on this contract? It's a bigger picture, and I think you have to always look at more than just how much money am I making.
Yeah. And I think it says a lot about us though, too. I've been working here 5 years. Jeff's been 8, multiple companies really for us working here at the same time. And, it's common, very common that I'm working with folks that worked here 2 years ago
and came back.
And now they're like, I can't get back. I'm trying so hard to get back in. I just want to come back to Peraton. For me, that tells me, that we got something doing okay. We're doing something right, when it comes to employee.
I've
taken care of
many times. Yeah. Grass ain't always green on the other side. So, and it's not discouraging anybody from going after better opportunities. It may have been a promotion at a company. We all have done it, and it's just, it's the times change. I always tell people this: you always got to know that the job market is just like interest rates, housing markets. They are up and down. And so you got to know what climate you're in, whether it's an employer's market, whether it's an employee's market. When we came out of the pandemic, people could make demands. They could say, I will only accept this. I will only work from home. We saw it, Brian. People they made demands. The employees were in control. Well, just like the housing market, it changes. Interest rates are kind of high right now. So people are they are like, let me pause. I'm not selling my house right now because if I sell it, I'm going to lose this interest rate. And so the job market, you have to be the same way. And sometimes you got to say, you know what, maybe I need to stay where I'm at, or maybe I need to consider this role until the market gets better.
Yeah. And, I'd like to stress though, too, when we just talk about, doing everything in the right spots, these are definitely questions, that you would ask after an interview. So you wouldn't want to ask these during an interview with a hiring manager or program manager, what have you. You don't want to definitely ask salary related questions, those type of things. That's something you're going to want to talk to the recruiter about, where you can kind of have a more individualized back and forth. Okay, here's the hourly rate. Then you can be like, well, does it include, what's the paid time off? I think you should ask that regardless of whatever company. You should always ask, what exactly is the paid time off? What are the holidays? Those type of things, because that's going to help give you, what are the insurance? If you want dog insurance, does it have dog insurance, cat insurance? Those type of things, and it'll help give you a better picture of an offer, especially if you might be entertaining multiple offers where you got one that pays you 12 grand more, but gives you 2 weeks less paid time off, and then. To me, I'm always about the work-life balance. So I'm always going to take, 12 grand versus paid time off. Yeah, paid time off, that kind of thing. Well, we got about 15 minutes left. Anybody got any other questions? I see we still got, some folks still on here with us, trudging it out with us. I know we're not the most entertaining people on the planet. We try to be. So, certainly feel free to ask us any questions. I hope everyone's been able to take, some opportunity to connect with us on LinkedIn. Anybody looking that is applying to roles, certainly reach out to us at militaryconnect@peraton.com or on LinkedIn. Just if you do reach out on LinkedIn, sometimes it can be a lengthier response time until I can get back to folks, and so forth. Sometimes it's out of hand on there. But I always catch up, though. I will say I always catch up. No one goes left unread on that kind of thing. So, we definitely appreciate that. And then we do have our next session coming up in June, which I highly suggest people to come to. That's our interviewing session. We go into some real good depth on how to functionally prepare for an interview and really help yourself stand out in an interview. These are time-tested things we've done when we've interviewed people, so these are time-tested things. So we can really help you figure out how to effectively prepare for a role so that when you're doing an interview, you can really come off as one of the best candidates that they've talked to. Because that's what you need to do, right?
Hey, Brian, also, I put in the chat, also, these podcasts, they are recorded. And so I put the link of some of our recorded podcasts. So if you open up that link and scroll down, you will see Mission Transition Podcast. And so there's some that are recorded already, charting your course, translating your experience, decoding job descriptions. So we edit, sometimes we'll redo them and we'll change and we'll add and we'll have some more up-to-date relevant information. But if you scroll through those, feel free to, I would recommend they're recorded conversations. We bring on guest speakers as well. So you could be driving in your car and listen to a podcast and get a nugget, something that you've never heard of that can be beneficial to you when it comes to your search. So
we try not to be too monotone. We don't want to put you to sleep on 495, but
yeah.
But yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I definitely suggest checking out, Peraton.com anyway. We've got a lot of information we put out there on Peraton benefits and stuff like that that'll really give you a solid picture of about this organization. And the one thing you find out about this organization, though, too, is it's a fast-paced yet growing organization. We've quadrupled in size since we've been here. Probably more than that for you, huh, Jeff? Because you got 3 years on me. So, yeah, I mean, this organization, it's making moves out here. Billions and billions and billions of dollars, and so forth. So, when you want to get into a company that's got growth potential as well, that's kind of the place to be. That's because I've done multiple roles here at Peraton myself. So, but I think that we got any other questions? I always forget I got to scroll this thing down. I wish I could just do it on its own. David said he's been a few. Well, we appreciate it, David. We always try to get some of the latest and greatest information, though, too. That's the good thing about talking to folks like us is we're really kind of ingrained into the current job market, because I think everybody on the call is probably very aware that the job market's just like any other market out here. It ebbs and flows. There's jobs everywhere, and then you can't find a job to save your life. And there's jobs everywhere, and you can't find a job to save your life. So we understand that kind of heartbeat. We're very in tune with when it's good to be a candidate and when it's good to be an employer, when it's kind of in the middle, what's hot, what's not so hot, as far as some role availabilities, and understanding skill sets and transition as well. I can tell you, Jeff and I both went through a lot of having to have a lot of humility when we transitioned out to figure out what the next step was going to look like in that same time. So we've dealt with a lot of folks. We're here in the National Capital Region. We deal with a lot of transitioning service members from all branches of service, all ranks and grades.
Yeah, I would tell you, to add that, Brian, out of the three of us, there's probably no scenario that we haven't been through when it comes to the job market. We've been through companies being closed, companies being acquired, mergers, layoffs, contract ends. I don't think there's any such scenario that I haven't even been through or known someone that been through that I can't relate to. So
Like
that's the great
directly
thing
know
about
too. Like one of
yeah.
us has been through each one of those, if not multiple versions of those. I think you and I for sure have definitely hit every single one of those.
Every
When
one
I
of
show up to
them.
work and they say, "Hey, you might not have a job in a month." Why not? Some company bought our whole side of the organization. You're like, what?
I had
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. And that's the great thing about it is um the great thing about having a network is when situations like that happen, the first thing you think of is who do I know in my network that I can reach out to let them know I am currently in the market. I am now looking. And the worst time to need a network, to start a network is when you need it.
That's very true.
Because
And
when you're looking for a job and you say I don't know anybody, because the whole entire time while I was employed, I didn't care about a network because I had a job.
yeah,
I would tell you, you always make time to be your net, whether you're at a job, you're going to lunch with competitors, companies, you're at a job fair. You
yeah,
always be impressionable. You always be friendly. You never know who you're going to reach out to. You meet people, you connect with them on LinkedIn, you follow, you learn, you grow. Even while you're employed, train yourself to spend 30 minutes on LinkedIn every day to scroll, to look, to learn.
yeah.
Because I'm telling you, I've been where I went to a job. It was a smaller company, and I went to work, and we were told that morning we're closing our doors today, and we all lined up, kind of signed our little last paycheck stuff, and I remember coming home 3 hours later. My wife said, "What are you doing home?" I said, "I don't have a job anymore. The office closed today. It was our last day." So
Yeah, that's
you
stress.
think you're gonna get a month. Something. I mean, it's small companies, and I'm not against small companies because I was with that company for about 5 years, and it was a great company. It was a great culture. It's just that they landed on hard times. Small company, and a small company could lose 2 or 3 big contracts, and
That's devastating. Yeah.
totally change the dynamics. But the great thing about it is small companies, they're lean. If they employ you, they got work for you to do. So I'm not against small companies. I learned a lot. I probably
Yeah.
couldn't be in this role unless I was with a couple small companies.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you just got to continue to network, grow, have friends. That network is crucial to you. Panicking and stressing out. And I've had a lot of talent acquisition people reach out to me probably in the last month and a half in the talent acquisition community saying, "Hey, Jeff, I just got laid off. I'm looking. Let me know if you come across something." So,
Yeah. And that's, I think that's why we learned how to build networks like that so well, is because those periods of times there, you just don't have job security sometimes like that. And not because you're a contractor, it's just because that's the world out here, right? It's hard to get laid in and get comfortable. Like, well, you never know. Things grow, things get cut, and that's the beauty of growing. That's why this LinkedIn one is so important to me because it's got a lot of value for your lifetime. I know we always talk about when you're looking for a job, but I've learned over these years that it's much more important to do this when you're not looking for a job, so that when all of a sudden you're in a position, you've built this monster platform for yourself where you can, even in today's job market, I feel like I'm still lucky enough that I get in my inbox people, "Hey, you looking for another role?" No,
isn't it
versus,
a good feeling? It is a good feeling to know
yeah,
that
versus,
someone. Yes. Mhm.
because, and all that's really based on is because of our algorithms, right?
Yep.
It's, I'm one of their first, second, or third connections. They've seen me, they did a search, and I popped up really high because of my algorithm and engagement. I was probably one of the first 2 or 3 people that popped up and, hey, looked at my LinkedIn real quick and be like, "Hey, this guy's solid. He's been doing this forever. Let me see."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
even when you're looking, even if everybody on this call, you say I learned something, and a month later you say I got a job, and you reach out, you say, "Hey, Brian, Jeff, learn something on your podcast," or "I didn't get a job at Peritone," or wherever it may be, to be able to know that, okay, I got a job now, and to realize that um, now that you have a job, don't stop networking. If you're employed and someone reaches out to you and you're not looking, like me and Brian, we're not looking. We're not mean about saying don't contact me, or I'm not, we graciously say thank you for considering me, but currently I'm not looking. And in my case, I'll always say, is there a position you have in mind that I could share with my network of talent acquisition specialists?
And I'll even tell them too, but definitely keep me in your Rolodex. So
yeah,
keep me in your Rolodex. So just because I'm not now doesn't mean 60 days from now something could happen in the world and somehow I'm miraculously I don't have a job either. So.
Yeah. So even in that capacity, and I think that the government employees had to learn that lesson a lot. A lot of them said, I was in the government, I thought I was never going to have to look for a job. So I totally the whole social media platform, LinkedIn, for the last 10, 15 years. They totally ignored it. They didn't need it. They didn't like it. They didn't understand it because I work for the government. And many of them have told me I made a drastic mistake by not, building my network, because now I am totally just in the dark with, starting how to
yeah.
Many government, we're in the DC area, and it's a lot of people that got what happened with DOGE and government contract. I mean, the government being reduced. Many of them are like, duck out of water. They just like, wow, I really, never expected to find myself looking for a job.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was wow. I mean, that's all I could say. It was wow, especially like in the height of all the DOGE cutbacks here in the DC area. I mean, it was half the people we were talking to, and then that'd be the question. I'd be like, well, you got LinkedIn? And they'd be like, no. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Aren't you like a US-14? I don't even have a LinkedIn.
So
you're gonna be tough to help, aren't you?
So yeah. So this is important. Never forget your social media platform. I can't speak about all the other ones, but I would tell you your LinkedIn one is crucial that you stay active on it and that you continue to grow it and cultivate it and learn how to utilize it to your advantage.
Perfect. Well, it looks like we're about at time. So what Jeff and I definitely like to do is, thank everyone, that came, hung out with us today, interacted today. We had a good showing out, some great questions. So, love it. That's what kind of keeps us motivated to keep doing, these kind of things, put these things together, really think outside of the box from what we get all the time from engaging people in our daily work lives. So we always try to make content that's important for people, right? So my final thought would be, if you're out here looking for a role right now, you're struggling, just know you are not the only one. It's like that for a lot of people in the job market right now that are just exhausted and burnt out on trying to figure out how to get it right. But the word of advice is you just got to keep pushing through, make adjustments, see what works. If it's not hitting, make a little more adjustments from there. Jeff, what about you? Final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit it with it, Brian, as far as when it comes to it's a lot of people out there, and you just gotta, land somewhere, be humble enough to maybe take a step back and accept the role that you're traditionally, that you feel like you may even feel like you're overqualified for. So, and whenever you get an opportunity to interview, just understand that, those that communicate, effectively, take the initiative, build rapport, and kind of leave a lasting impression. You'll kind of set yourself apart for that. So in today's job market, you just got to be proactive. You have to go beyond my resume and I'm qualified. It's convincing someone I'm the best. I'm the best person for this particular role.
Absolutely.
Communicating. Yeah. If you get an interview, you got to look at it more than just an interview. You got to look at it like I'm competing with the person next to me, and I want to leave the lasting impression that I'm the best person for this opportunity. And when you get in there, show your worth. Look for other opportunities within that organization.
Good to go. Well, once again, thank you from Peraton. Thank you from Peraton's military and veterans team. We look forward to hearing from each and every one of you, whether it's on our LinkedIn or our militaryconnect@peraton.com. Also, please look at our career site, careers.paradigm.com. Apply to things, let us know, and we'll see if we can get you taken care of. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.